Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama.
Hare Krishna. I'm Rajarsi Dasa. Welcome to Hare Krishna today. Today we're going to continue our study on the subject matter of the soul and the super soul. Our series dealing with knowledge required for spiritual initiation. So students, we said, preparing for spiritual initiation, they're required to cultivate knowledge of the self, God, the material world, the process for attaining perfection, all of that. Let us look at the questions in this section and then we'll begin to answer them one after another. The first question: describe the soul's characteristics and explain how they differ from those of the body. 2. Explain as best as you can verse 2:13, that's chapter 2, text 13 of the Bhagavad Gita. That's Dehi Nosmini Yatha Dehi. Text 3, or rather question 3. Explain the role of the super soul or Paramatma. You can do so by looking up these verses from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verse 61, chapter 15, text 15, and chapter 13, text 23. Then 4, how does the super soul administer the karma of the living entities? In other words, if you did things in your last life, right? When you're getting it now, who determines what you get, how much you get, and all of that? Is it by random chance? No. So we'll discuss that. 5. Discuss the importance of desire in spiritual life. 6. What is Sanatan Dharma? 7. What does the image of the two birds on the same branch conjure up for you? So these are the subject matters in this topic, the soul and the super soul. So we go right ahead and we deal with the first question. Describe the soul's characteristics and explain how they differ from those of the body. Actually, this first verse and this first question and the second question, they're very closely related. The second one says, explain as best as you can, verse 2:13 of the Bhagavad Gita. So, let us look at describe the soul's characteristics and explain how they differ from those of the body. Perhaps the first place that Krishna introduces in the Gita the idea of the soul, that's in 2:12, chapter 2, text 12. In 11, he just chastised Arjuna, calling him a fool. He said, Ashochyanan vashochastvang pragyavadangscha bhashasi gatasuna gatasungscha na anushochanti panditaha. You speaking pragyavad, you speaking as though Arjun, as though you're a very learned man, but you're mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise, pandit, they lament neither for the living nor for the dead. So then Krishna begins spiritual education. Text 12, he says, Na tuevahang jatu nasang na twang nime janati paha na chaiva na bhavishyamaha sarve vayam ataha param. that never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, Arjuna, nor all these kings present on this battlefield, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. So what is that Krishna is speaking about? Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you. What is he speaking about? He's speaking about the eternality of the soul. Krishna is saying, I am eternal, I always existed, and all souls existed. I will continue to exist. Now there are many people who concoct the idea that we all merge, or we were with God, or we are God, and we'll merge and come one with God. What an ridiculous idea. We are God, but we are struggling and we are suffering in this world. So this is a very foolish understanding, to say the least. Krishna is saying here to Arjuna, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you. Aham and Tvam. I always existed, and you existed. Nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. I will continue to exist, and you will continue to exist. Later on, one of the questions explains Sanatan Dharma. What is Sanatan Dharma? Where is the question of Sanatan Dharma if everybody is God? Then who renders service to who? So, Sanatan Dharma means the understanding of three essential factors. Bhaktas engage in bhakti to Bhagavan. The souls are eternal, and they meant to be bhaktas and Bhagavan. God is eternal, and bhakti is that relationship. So when Krishna establishes this first point, that the soul is eternal, then now he goes to the next verse, 13, and he says, Dehi nosmin yatha dehe kumaram yauvanam jara tatha dehantara praptir dhiras tatra na muhyati. He says that this eternal soul is now embodied. Deha means this body. So dehi nosmin yatha dehe, the soul within this body. It is passing through this body. Kumara means boyhood. Yauvana means youth. Jara means old age. And then Tata Dehantara Prapti. Then the soul passes into another body at death. So Krishna says, Dhiras Tatara Na Muhyati. A sober person is not bewildered by this change of body. Because the sober person is a person who knows, I am eternal. Nothing can happen to me. So when we are looking at this, the characteristics, explain how they differ from the body. Remember, the body is always changing. Bodies change. They take birth, they remain for some time, they produce some byproducts, dwindle, vanish. It's the body. But the souls are eternal. The soul is different. So, let us take a look at some of the verses from the Bhagavad Gita that you can get some more in-depth understanding of the soul and the body, their relation. Let's take a look at the same chapter 2, verse 16. Na sato vidite bhavo, na bhavo vidite sataha, ubhayorapi drishtuantas tu anyos tattva darshibi. Very deep verse. Krishna is saying, those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent, the material body, there is no endurance. And of the eternal, the soul, there is no change. This they have concluded by studying the nature of both. So people who are actually seers of the truth, they have clearly understood that there are two things: a changing body, and there's no endurance. This body is perishable, is going to die. It's changing, it will be finished. But for the soul, it is eternal, and there's no change for the soul. Krishna continues in text 17. Avinashi tu tad vidhi yena sarvamidang tatam vinasham avyayasyasya nakaschit kartum arhati. That which pervades the entire body, you should know to be indestructible. No one is able to destroy that imperishable soul. Good news, right? Yeah. If we know that we are not this perishable body, this temporary body, what is there to lament about? That's why Krishna says, the wise lament neither for the living nor for the dead. The dhira, the sober person, he is not bewildered by the change of body. As Krishna would explain in following verses, he compares it, the body, to be like garment, old clothes. Old body like old clothes. You take off some old clothes and you put on some new clothes. Anybody go crying and, nobody lament, nobody cries for that. They know, person just changed some clothing. Well, a dhira, a sober person, when a soul gives up an old body, he knows the person just gives up something. He gave up some old garment and he'll take on a new one. So, Krishna is making this point here about the soul. Then, in text 18 he says, Antavanta ime deha nityas yukta sharirinaha anashino prameyasya tasmad yudyasva bharata. The material body of the indestructible, immeasurable, an eternal living entity is sure to come to an end. Therefore fight, O descendant of Bharat. Remember, they're on a battlefield. Arjuna is reluctant. He came under the sway, under the spell of illusion. He's lamenting. Why? This is what illusion means, to misidentify with the body, misidentifying the body as the self. So thinking the body to be the self, Arjuna is lamenting, he's feeling pain, he's thinking, oh, my grandfather Bhishma, my teacher Drona, my cousins there. So he becomes bewildered. So Krishna has to speak transcendental knowledge to wake Arjuna up. So everyone in this world, they need to hear transcendental knowledge to wake up. This sleeping condition and these bodily activities is like a dream. We're sleeping and we are dreaming and we're having a nightmare. You're suffering in dream. But if someone calls you and you wake up, you're relieved. So this Bhagavad Gita is a call. Krishna is calling us. Wake up, Tatrinu, hear. When we hear transcendental knowledge, it has the power to wake us up. And the classic example is that of Arjuna. Arjuna's example is quite significant. In the beginning of the Gita, he says, my mouth is drying up, my skin is burning, my limbs are quivering, my mind is reeling, my bow is falling from my hand. Arjuna was experiencing this extreme depression due to the bodily concept of life. But that same Arjuna who said, I am confused about my duty, I have lost all composure because of miserly weakness. In this condition, I am asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. The same Arjuna who was depressed and dysfunctional, when he submitted to Krishna and Krishna spoke the Gita, then towards the end, in the 18th chapter, Krishna said, have you heard this with an attentive mind? Has your illusion now been destroyed? And then Arjuna responded, He said, Nashto moha smritir labdva twat prasadan mayachuta. He said, Nashto moha, my illusion is now gone. How? By my intellect, my power? He said, no. Twat prasad, by Krishna, by your mercy. Prasad means mercy. Twat prasadan mayachuta. By your mercy. My illusion is now gone. Nashto moha smriti labdha. I have regained my memory by your mercy. So all souls are covered over in this world of Maya, deluded. But to get that mercy, we have to do like Arjuna. We have to submit to Krishna. I am bewildered, I am confused, I have lost all composure. I am a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. Krishna is right within the heart, as we will see in a little while. He's right within the heart. If we don't come to this point, we remain in our ignorance, misidentifying with the physical body, and we go on in this way. So Krishna then says, text 19, Ya enam veti hantaram yas chainam manyate hatam ubhautau na vijanito nayam hante na hanyate. Neither he who thinks the living entity the slayer, nor he who thinks it is slain, is a knowledge, for the self slays not, nor is slain. The self, the soul, doesn't kill anyone, and the soul cannot be killed. So a person who is in ignorance, he cannot function because of ignorance. But Krishna is telling Arjuna that this is the idea. Of course, Srila Prabhupada explained that this is not to support killing. This verse is not meant to support people. Well, you say, well, so why are you telling us don't kill animals and so on? They are not their bodies, they are spirit, soul. So I could just kill them and eat them. They are not their bodies. I could just kill their bodies. What about you? You are not your body too. Suppose we reverse the same philosophy on you and say, all right, you are not your body. Let's provide food with your body for some creatures. How would you like that? The golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Of course, we agree that all living beings in this world, by the arrangement of material nature, they have to eat something. The scripture says, Ahastani sahastanam apadani chatushpadam palguni tatra mahatam jivo jivasya jivanam. This is the principle. Jivo jivasya jivanam. That one living being is food for another. But who eat what food? That Krishna says, Ahastani sahastanam apadani chatushpadam. Those who are devoid of hands, pray for those that have hands. Those that are devoid of legs, pray for the four-legged, like the plant, the grass, and so on. Devoid of legs, pray for the four-legged, the animals, and so on. So the weak is the subsistence for the strong, and the general rule holds that one living being is food for another. By nature's arrangement, there is a way that things function. But human beings are not just created like another animal to function by the impulses of nature. Just like dogs have their food, the cows have their food. You don't find the cows changing their diet. You don't find the cows saying, well, look, for thousands of years we've been eating grass. You know what? I think we should start going to eat fried chicken now, or we should eat up these goats now. No. By nature's way, these creatures function, the way they're programmed to. But human beings are not programmed like animals. There is Shastra. Astra means weapon. This Shastra comes from that root, to guide, to direct. Someone would use a weapon to guide someone or to get some, control someone. The Shastras are meant to control the human beings. The human beings are not meant to function like animals, just by impulse and feeling and things like that. That's what distinguishes us from the animals, the ability to follow Shastra Vidhi. So, the point we are dealing with here is that these souls that are eternal, described in the Bhagavad Gita here, the characteristics of the soul being eternal, cannot be killed, but it should not be used as an excuse to kill the animals and so on, or even for human beings. The example Srila Prabhupada gives is a surgical operation may be necessary to help a patient. Some type of operation, knife is used, and it is meant to heal the patient. But the same knife in the hands of a bandit, he uses it to cut someone's throat, to exploit. It's two different things. So we have to understand this philosophy in the proper way and not misuse it and say, well, these animals, they are just going to relieve them of some garment, right? Krishna say in the Bhagavad Gita, these bodies are just garments, so let me just relieve some people of their garments. No, it's bogus. So anyway, let's continue to look at, of course, we can read one more verse about the nature of the soul. Very popular verse. Najayate mriyate va kadachinayam bhutva bhavitavana bhuya ajo nitya shashvatoyam purano nahanyate hanyamani sharire. Krishna says, for the soul there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. He is not slain. When the body is slain, this is great news. How often people are lamenting for the loss of a very dear one. It's one of the most traumatic experiences in life, that a very near and dear one passes away, and this is an extremely painful situation. But at this point in life, when we're going through this, it is required that we read Bhagavad Gita and hear from Lord Krishna that that soul that left the body, Krishna is saying, Najayati mriyati. For this soul, no birth and death. The soul is eternal. And in following verses, Krishna says, Nainam chindanti shastrani. This soul cannot be cut to pieces by any weapon. Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavaka. Nachainam kledayanti apo, na shoshayati maruta. It cannot be cut to pieces by any weapon. It cannot be burned by fire. It cannot be moistened by water. It cannot be withered by the wind. Nothing can happen to this soul. So we just have to compose ourselves and understand the person who left the body, that person is eternal. The relationship we had with that soul is temporary, but that soul is eternal, and I am eternal also. So real compassion means helping or doing what is required for the soul to be reinstated in its relationship with the Supreme. This is real compassion. So all these things, we may discuss characteristics of the soul, this, that, all these things. But the practical result in day-to-day life must be there. Otherwise, what is the value of all this knowledge? If we just see people as though they are bodies, and we just take care of their bodies, and we don't have a clue as to what is the need of the soul, where is the soul going? Because soon we are going to be kicked out of these bodies. So what is required for the soul when leaving this body to go to the journey, its destination? What is required? If we don't have a clue, then what is the value of the human form of life? What is the purpose of life? So, Krishna is saying, or rather in these verses, these explain as best as you can, verse 213 of the Bhagavad Gita, that's Dehi Nosmin Yatha Dehi. The de-embodied soul is passing through this body from childhood to youth to old age, and then it passes into another body at death. So it's very important. This is described as the first lesson in spiritual life, and we should understand this clearly. I'm Rajarsi Dasa saying Hare Krishna, and do join us again next week for a continuing presentation.